When I arrived, there was no home left, it was complete chaos. Nothing remained, the cars and the house had all been bombed. Perhaps you have been stuck in a small village for 20 years, besieged by enemies who look at everyone with threatening eyes. Sajawan village, in the Barak district of Logar province, is a place that was severely destroyed by forces led by the US, NATO, and their allies during the unlawful 20-year occupation. When they targeted Rahimullah, they added insult to injury by rubbing salt into his wounds and twisting the knife. The atrocities, crimes, and destruction endured during those 2 decades brought civilians' lives into harsh conditions, and the bitter memories remain alive in the people's minds. Logar province, Barak district, Sajawan village, old alleys, ruined houses, holes, broken walls, and an overwhelming silence. In front of all this stands an ordinary villager. His eyes are wet with grief from 20 years of occupation. His trembling, broken voice shows the pain he carries. He wipes the tears from his eyes with his worn-out scarf and empties the burden from his heart. When this incident happened, I was in Iran, working there. I received a call saying that a serious problem had occurred. I kept calling, but none of the phones were working. When I finally started my journey home, it took me 2 or 3 nights to reach. When I arrived, there was no home left, it was complete chaos. Such anonymous grief and pain cannot be endured by mere patience. Even the strongest hearts and the greatest endurance break under the weight of caring for 17 widows and orphans every day, while witnessing the incomplete dreams and fading hopes of their fathers. This is the bitter reality of Rahmatullah's life. May God never let anyone experience such a situation. It was extremely difficult. It was not easy at all. It was a very hard day. There was no one left in our house. My entire family had been martyred. My father and brothers had all been martyred. I was the only man left. Altogether, there were 17 women and children depending on me in that house. These pains have not been forgotten and will never be forgotten, because they are not only stories of the past. They are alive today in the tears of mothers, fathers, and orphans. They live in the silence of orphans and in the freshly written histories on gravestones. Raz Muhammad is the younger brother of Rahmatullah, who survived the attack. He was 5 years old when the invaders mercilessly martyred his elderly father and 2 brothers. Yet the pain is still visible in his eyes, and he recounts the story of that raid. The night was extremely difficult. They had targeted both our local and surrounding areas, shooting at everything. Many people were martyred, around 19 in total. By morning, there were 2 prisoners, and they were released. In this situation, they dragged out my father and my 2 brothers. At that time, we were still very young, very small. The people who had been prisoners were released. They kicked my father in front of our eyes. After that, they also martyred my 2 brothers. It is so horrific. The situation was very difficult, and there were stories of my brothers being stabbed with knives and guns. This was the cruelty and terror of the raid, in which the invaders went to extreme lengths against a traveler's father and brothers. They blocked the car at their doorstep and dragged it until he lost his life in front of his children. They had dragged him from the house in a car to this place. There were 2 of them, and they kept stabbing him with knives until the end. My brothers were martyred right there in front of the door. The man they had taken out, our father, he was later taken from that place and martyred as well. Both of them were in that same spot.
د سجاوند کلی یوازې د یو کور د غم او بدبختۍ کیسه نه ده.
Sajawan village is not just a story of one household's tragedy. Countless stories lie buried under its soil. 10 a.m., an invasion full of terror. Bombing. Soldiers on foot with rifles, showing no mercy, shooting innocent civilians, blowing down walls and doors, sprinkling salt in the wounds of the injured, and twisting old scars. Blind raids, 1 village, a few houses, 19 martyrs. All of this expands under the shadow of this documentary in the blood-soaked land of Sajawand. Here we hear the stories of 2 more people whose suffering is so deep that it has silenced them, yet the wounds of martyr Rahimullah pierce the heart, and in the name of Allah, he breathes his last. They looted all the houses, carried out bombings, and moved on foot. Anyone who came out of their house was shot. They even tore off the doors. Many were martyred. My own brother was martyred. His name was Gilajan. Another, named Salam, was also martyred. My cousin was among the 19 people martyred here. I will also tell you about the wounded. Those who were injured, they threw them on blankets and took them to another house. Rahimullah was wounded. They poured alcohol on him, beat him, and even put salt on his wounds. He screamed, Allah, Allah, while doing this. Eventually, he was martyred from his injuries. Sajawand is a village where children once played freely, joy lit their faces, laughter colored the village, but now all of it lies under the soil. They only wanted to live, but the unfortunate war reached their doors. The invaders executed another villager, Kyle, without any crime, shooting 100 rounds from a rifle. There were our elder brother's sons there. One was named Kyle Muhammad, and the other Fazl Rahman. Their father was named Sultan. They brought them out, without distinguishing between good or bad. Kyle was shot by about 100 bullets of PK machine gun, then turned him to this side. Fazl Rahman has been hit strongly, and he was also shot. Another bullet hit him. Another bullet hit him. Their father grabbed their hands and feet, and he also hit them. From that moment, the people began to cry. He kept hitting, and when the people cried again, he released them. From that place, Sultan told the people, "Take this, hold it in your hand, hold it tightly." Later, when the American forces fired at the people, they said, "Why are you throwing it?" Then they tied a turban around the foot and pulled it like that. They kept him in that house until morning. At dawn, when they were taken, they were martyred. That night, 19 people from our village were shot. Kyle Muhammad did this, and then did that. The joy of everyone was completely destroyed. Then they left. In our house, 1 person was wounded, and 1 was martyred. Otherwise, they did not let the people go. I let the wounded leave. Then I came back and lifted the sheet. I called to their mother, but she could not come. She recognized them and said, "Yes, these are my sons." We collected all the flesh piece by piece from inside and brought it. 20 years have passed on this land of occupation, but the pain, wounds, misfortunes, and suffering left behind have not faded from the memory of Afghans. Rahmatullah spent days and nights in Iran as a migrant, unaware that the invaders had drained the colors of life from his home. Upon returning, before he could even rest, his little daughter informed him of his son's death 5 months later. I was not in the country, I was in Iran. That spring, he was martyred in the month of April as a result of a drone attack. A bullet had struck his head. The bullet had entered here, and with the snake wound, it had exited from below. The bullet is still there. It was left as it was, it had not exploded, and it caused his martyrdom. I had a little daughter sitting with me, and she told me, "He has been martyred, father." I did not know where he had been martyred. The bullet had entered him, lodged inside, and had torn the flesh. I was not aware of this until I went to his grave. When I saw his grave, I realized that he had truly been martyred. Every day in Sajawan tells a story of terror and tragedy inflicted by the invaders. One evening, 6 mortar shells struck and martyred Rahmatullah's father while he was at prayer. The blast hit his face, and both of his eyes were blown out as a result. After that, another 6 bullets hit the house, striking it directly this house and that one, and my father was martyred. In the evening, at the time of prayer, my mother and father were both praying. A bullet hit my father's eye, it struck and caused severe injury, and my mother's hand was broken in 3 places and is still disabled. These were people whose eyes were fixed on life with hope. Children, the elderly, and young men who didn't even know the name of war or touch a rifle. One war-torn Afghan describes the past wounds of his family and rejoices at the return of order under the Islamic Emirate. Then a helicopter arrived, followed by fighter jets. The whole sky was filled and occupied. In Sajawan, eventually ground soldiers arrived and began searching houses. Everyone was worried that they would enter their homes. The entire population was in fear, men, women, children. This is the same Sajawan village that was swallowed in the flames of invaders' terror, where even animals breathed fearfully, and every moment could have brought another raid, another bullet, another airstrike. Raw roads, winding alleys, destroyed mud houses, and innocent, suffering people still tell stories of the unparalleled cruelty of American invaders. Kak Bayan, with his 30-member family, hid in the mud rooms of a house out of fear and witnessed another horror. The bombardment began and continued approximately 82 times. Our entire family, around 32 people, including my father, were inside the house. It is a very large fortress-like house. When they entered, they came inside violently. I was there along with my children. Helicopters were also firing, grenades were thrown at the doors, and rockets were launched and shot there. The savage invaders placed their feet on sleeping children and dragged Hak Bayan from his neck in front of his family. They beat him, smashed him against the basement door, and threw him down into the cellar. The invaders descended, saw a wounded man in the cellar raising his hands. Yet, they pressed the rifle but onto Hak Bayan's shoulder and broke him. They broke the door and entered through it. You can see the door, it was destroyed. They entered with extreme violence. The young boys were asleep. I told them they were only children and should not be harmed, but they ignored it and even stepped on the children. Then they put a cloth over my head and tied my hands with handcuffs. They dragged me out from that place. When they brought me outside, the children were also there. They threw me into a basement and told me to shout that there were people inside. I told them there was no one. We had stored some hay there at the time, we had sheep at that time. They insisted I go inside the basement, lifted the cloth from my head, and when I reached there, they kicked me and I fell down. My hands were handcuffed. I stood up again, and they stepped on me. Then they forced me to speak in Persian and Pashto, asking if anyone was inside. I said there was no one. Inside, there was one wounded person whose location was visible. I had a rifle placed on my shoulder, and they attacked him. The wounded man was martyred there on the spot, the traces of it are still visible. Kak Bayan was carried away with tied hands in the back in a very bad condition while a martyr Holy Quran reciter from a nearby school lay covered in blood on the ground, the Quran in his pocket. When they went to that place, there was another religious student from the madrasa. He had the Holy Quran in his pocket. The aircraft fired around 82 times. The things that happened in that house, the acts, the terror, they were completely inhumane. It was far from any sense of humanity. Despite this, they claimed to follow human rights. From there, they took me to another place. They asked if I recognized someone, I said no. They showed me a Qari, Holy Quran reciter, and said he was a Fidai attacker. I said no, he wasn't, he had the Holy Quran in his pocket. They took out the Holy Quran and said, if you love the Quran, sit with him. Then they detonated mines under him, and he was blown into pieces, poor man. We eventually retrieved what was left and buried it. We go ahead and now we show the remaining images of the incidents to reflect the extent of terror and how people's lives were consumed in fire. The destroyed village and ruined houses illustrate the invaders' cruelty. Passing through broken wooden doors, we turn the camera toward the site of another attack. Here, we listen to the story of another tragic incident and raid that occurred at 4 p.m., during which Maulawi Muhammad Salim was martyred in his field. I was irrigating the field with the son of a teacher, who was also the imam of the mosque. His name was Muhammad Salim. We were both irrigating the land. It was around 4 o'clock, when the aircraft attack began. The noise was immense. We thought the bombs had fallen in the market. Some young men came and said that Maulawi Muhammad Salim had been martyred by a drone. When we arrived, the poor man's soul had left, even the doctor couldn't save him. This shows clearly how cruel America's actions were. Sajawand has preserved in its bosom the marks of these blind raids and acts of barbarity, which shocked the heart at first sight. Here, the tear-filled eyes of another victim tell their story of pain and the invaders' pleasure in torturing their dogs. When the situation became a bit calmer, they released a dog on me. As I pushed it away, my handcuffs broke. I had handcuffs on my hands. By Allah's grace, I freed one hand. When I screamed, the Americans were happy because the dog attacked on me. They were very pleased with this. It is difficult to know which pain of Sajawan to write about and which incident to portray. The more we investigate, the more untold horrors emerge. The invaders did not care about Afghan lives or happiness. On Eid night, when Muslims were celebrating, Sajawan faced yet another tragedy. Innocent Afghans, returning from the city after buying Eid supplies, were shot by the invaders. It was Eid's night. Before there was not market here, there was a market in Baraki Barak. We were moving to the upper market to bring some supplies for Eid in the house. And we American forces had set up an ambush there. They claimed the Mujahideen were approaching and immediately opened fire. I was wounded in the leg. I told my brother to retreat. At least you should stay alive, I said. He took the motorcycle, and again I told him to flee. They continued shooting indiscriminately. I managed to take cover, but they targeted him along the way. One bullet entered through one eye and exited through the other side of his head. Another bullet struck him in the chest and came out through the other side. I eventually found shelter in a graveyard. They did not show us where he was. There, an incident happened and some people were martyred that day, and our elderly father prayed for them. We searched desperately for his body, hoping at least to ease his father's grief. Later, some boys were collecting apples when one of their coats got caught on something. When they looked closer, they found him. They called the others and said, "There is a person lying in the water." The people came and checked his identification card. They recovered his body and laid it aside. Alongside him were 6 other martyrs from that same day. The Americans collected the bodies of the 6 martyrs who had incident in a jeep car. Two brothers, one wounded, one martyr. The martyr's body was missing for 24 nights, only to be found later, showing signs of martyrdom. When they told me to release a martyr's hand, I did. They pulled out his hand and watch. They placed the hand on the wound. When they cleaned him, blood started flowing. They told Mawalwi Sahib at the funeral to leave the body in water for 3 days to show how the flesh had decomposed. They observed his beard, nails, and other parts.
کله چې تاسو دې سیمې ته سفر وکړئ نو وبګورئ چې د ظلم او وحشت له کبله رامنځته شوي خاموش.
When you travel to this area, you see the silent atmosphere created by cruelty and terror, where the cries of the innocent are trapped and human senses are overwhelmed. These houses were more than bricks, they were lives. Children's futures were protected here, yet invaders' raids, bombs, and bullets were not mere weapons, they were a crime against humanity.
د یرغلګرو ړندې چاپې بمونه او مرمۍ یوازې وسلې نه وې بلکې دا د انسانیت پر وړاندې لوی جرم خو زموږ د کمرې سترګې یوازې پر درد نه درېږي.
But our camera lens does not stop at pain. There is much more to show the world, the unity, resilience, and compassion of our people. People help each other, stand side by side, and after 20 years of destruction, they attempt to rise again. Under the rule of the Islamic Emirate, ordinary people's lives have changed. They work, farm, sow seeds, and plant hope for a better future. Thanks to Allah, there is now security here. The Emirate has done what it can for our people. The difference is huge. Like the difference between earth and sky. At that time, there were raids and bombings, even small children could not rest. Now, alhamdulillah, nights are calm, and days have no special problems. Since the Islamic Emirate arrived, there is security. People can go about their business freely. We are happy within the current security. Before, there were bombings, and we would watch the sky for aircraft. And the boys would run toward the mountains, whether they were mujahid or not. We have suffered a lot of difficulties. Now, alhamdulillah, everything is fine, there is security and we are very happy. Afghans are not a people who surrender to grief. It was this strong resolve and noble will that made them stand tall in Sajawan, shielding themselves from invaders' terror and proving their courage. When the invading Americans attacked Afghanistan, one of the principles of jihad is that when invaders, the Jewish invade a country, defending the country becomes an obligation upon its people. The Afghan Mujahideen rose against the occupiers and continued their struggle against them. History has shown that this land cannot be conquered by bombs or rifles. This land carries pride of faith, patience, and honor. Even with our limited weapons, we felt as though we were as powerful as nuclear weapons against them. When they began raids here, the Mujahideen's morale was very high. Even during attacks, they used heavy machine guns. There were times that they resisted bravely and defended the village until morning. Even the next day, the Mujahideen did not lose their courage and continued their resistance. Battles continued for days, and the Mujahideen fought with full courage and gave them a crushing response. Many occupiers were died here and forced them to retreat. The Mujahideen continued their jihad with full courage. Even when enemy aircraft and tanks attacked, they fought fearlessly, inflicted losses on the enemies, and even captured spoils, returning safely to their positions. This is not just the story of Sajawan. It is the living history of Afghanistan's villages, lands, and homes during decades of occupation, showing the cruelty and terror of invaders. But how long will ordinary people continue to suffer? How long will children pay the price of war? This documentary is not for revenge, it is for remembrance, so that history never forgets what happened to the innocent people of Sajawan.